This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. and Ms. White Plains, Westchester and the world, and all of you senators and Congress people out there. Pay attention. John Bailey with you in our 18th year of White Plains Week, every week, rounding up the news with Peter Katz, the anchor for all seasons, and Jim Benneroff is currently being debriefed. Here's what's happening, snowbirds. White Plains celebrated its 25th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, and at his breakfast Monday, Congresswoman Nita Lowey, State Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, County Executive George Latimer, and Mayor Tom Roach delivered strong criticism of the racist rancor troubling the nation today. County Executive George Latimer appeared before 150 persons in Portchester and clarified the status of the county airport, Indian Point, affordable housing, and Playland. A consulting firm, Nelson Nygaard, presented its concepts for how Route 119, Terrytown Road, could be turned into a complete street. We'll have a video report. Governor Andrew Cuomo presented the state budget and the bottom line for the White Plains School District: more school aid. A 2% tax cap, that means as high as a $225 million school budget. Peter Katz will deliver the most amazing 10 minutes in television, the Trump the President This Week report. This week, just this week.
Even more amazing this week, yes, because this week marks what, John?
His one
his 1st anniversary.
His 1st anniversary.
As president.
Right. And Chairman of the Board of Legislators, Benjamin Boykin, unveils county legislature committee chairs and is interviewed on what's ahead on People to Be Heard. And a chorus line dances its way into Westchester's hearts at Westchester Broadway Theater. And right now, we'll go to the White Plains Week Rolo Newsreel March of Time, and that was the program for the Martin Luther King Day program. And next slide up.
It's an annual breakfast.
Yes, right.
At Crown Plaza.
Right, exactly. And the next slide up shows you who spoke, and it was quite a entity. Nita Lowey, Congresswoman, said, instead of doing the budget in Washington, we are hearing racist comments coming from the leader of this country, Lowey said. What an embarrassment it is, not just to our people here, but to the entire world. Instead of a leader reaching out and bringing people together with love, concern, and focus, it is beyond me, beyond all of us in this room to understand how you can be elected with that kind of secret comment. And George Latimer said, Westchester gets it. Aren't we on the right path finally? This is a day where we take heart from what Dr. King's life meant. He preached nonviolence, but he did not preach timidity or avoiding issues head on. He gave us a roadmap, and now we have to start down that road. Andrea Stewart-Cousins said, we know how to make our country is our country. Make sure our country is our country, and guess what? Gesturing to the faces of the guests, it looks like this, and it will continue to look like this. Brother and sister, hand in hand, together, making sure that there's a government of the people, the promise of God, the promise of Martin Luther King demonstrated with his life, not in vain. Mayor Tom Roach said, you cannot lead the people if you do not love the people. A Dr. Martin Luther King quote. It sums up why Dr. Martin Luther King was so powerful. We are in difficult times that you can't even make up what you really read. There is so much ugliness, it's disturbing. And you also quoted Abraham Lincoln to end his speech about Lincoln's conciliation speech. But it was a really strong flavor of really outrage against the president's remarks of the previous week, which we told you about. And next up, we have a event in Portchester, and those were some of the people who were there. George Latimer showed up. Peter, tell us about it.
Well, County Executive George Latimer held an informal town hall meeting at a senior citizen center in Portchester last Saturday. John was there for it. And among the subjects brought up by the seniors, the Astorino administration's deal to privatize the Westchester County Airport, the state of affordable housing initiatives in the county, and whether the county should go ahead with the deal worked out during the Astorino administration to turn over operation of Playland to a private company, Standard Amusements.
My basic attitude is it was put down before the Board of Legislators after the election, and certainly I had a concern about any major decisions that were going to be made between Election Day and January 1st. Let's be candid, I won, and it wasn't that close, and I don't want somebody to make decisions between November 8th and December 31st that tie my hands for the 4 years that you've given me. If there's going to be a bad decision here, let me make it and then hold me accountable for my bad decision rather than I inherit something that I can't change or renegotiate. So I think that's pretty much where we're at now. We're going to look at the deal between the board and myself and our people, and we'll try to make some intelligent assessment. We're going to restudy the affordable housing needs of the county. I suspect within the month we'll reauthorize a study and develop new sets of goals. That'll be a 4-year goal over the term of this administration. And I think we're going to try to do what you've seen done in other places, which is small number of units positioned in places that fit into the neighborhood around them. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to Playland, and I live right nearby there. Me personally, if I had a blank slate, I'd go back to the old commission. I think it ran better when it ran outside of the politics of county government. I think it was a mistake for both Democratic, and it did start under a Democratic administration that changed the policy down there when they contracted with Marriott, and then when they brought it in-house as a branch of county government. Playland is a unique facility, and if it were administered separately and within a different type of process outside of the bound of politics, I think we would avoid a lot of grief that we've had over the last 30 years down there. But we have a deal in place right now. We have to determine if it's still valid. I've not gotten outreach from Standard Amusements in my new capacity since Election Day. So we'll find out where we stand.
So you've got two deals here. You've got the Standard Amusements Playland deal and then the airport deal. And basically, we had seen in the previous administration a push to get these done fairly quickly. Yeah. Now,
we're going to study them.
We're going to study, well, right. not only study them, but we're going to analyze them.
Right.
It's more than just a cursory study. It's a real analysis and also to try to make a projection and to try to develop a strategy, what makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. These are substantial assets, no matter how you cut it. Mm-hmm. And when you have substantial assets, I think you want to be very, very careful about what you do with them.
Right. Oh, one other item that came up, he was asked about Indian Point, and Shelley Mayer, the assemblywoman who was in the audience, who serves on this issue up in Albany, said that the task force that was going to explore alternatives to Indian Point electric supply has only met once since the governor made that agreement. And she hopes they'll be getting together soon. It's only 3 years away.
You know, what's interesting is that there may be an issue coming up shortly involving Indian Point, where the electric supply might be in some bit of jeopardy. At least the union over there would want you to think so, because they have been in very heated contract negotiations with Entergy to try to come to an agreement for the workers, a typical contract agreement, all of the issues, but on top of the issues that you normally would expect to find in contract negotiations is the issue of what happens after Indian Point closes. The union would like to see its workers kept on and covered for about a year after the closure, after they're out of work. They would have
unemployment.
a nice 1-year cushion.
Yes.
Plus health benefits.
That's unique. We have not heard that
So
before.
there have been some rather extensive negotiations going on.
A huge severance, basically, is what they're wanting, right? Right. Now, shocker of the week took place last Saturday, and that was Nelson Nygaard's Complete Streets Plan unveiled before some officials from White Plains, Greenburgh, and Tarrytown, and some other interested folks.
And if you're wondering what a Nelson Nygaard is, well, you're about to find out, because it's a consulting firm which held a briefing at the White Plains Library about the future of Route 119. It's actually a very large consulting firm, and the name is well known within transportation and government circles. It has several offices in key cities around the country and has worked on all sorts of transportation projects. Now, they've been looking at Route 119 through the prism of something called complete streets, a concept which treats different groups using a street as being equals. Now, that is, pedestrians and bike riders get just as much priority as drivers of cars and buses and trucks. Never mind that Route 119 was built and expanded to provide efficient vehicle access from Interstate 287 and other arteries to downtown White Plains, and to make the city an attractive place for businesses to set up their offices and retailers to open up their stores, and to make it easy for people to get to restaurants and entertainment. Part of what Nelson Nygaard is trying to push in the complete streets concept is to slow down traffic trying to get into White Plains, to narrow the roadway and turn over swaths of this corridor to bikes and walkers, and build new structures along both sides of the road. First, we'll see Larry Gould of the firm, and then the firm's Midge Walker.
Complete street literally means that for all the purposes that people in a community want to use a street, whether it's driving or parking or shopping or biking or walking or just being there, that a complete street should be able to fulfill those functions. The character of Route 119, again, it changes a lot. It is primarily a suburban arterial. By suburban arterial, I mean it's a wide street where most of the buildings are set back from the street. It's not like a main street or a neighborhood residential street where you walk down and get close to the buildings and you see things going on.
Complete streets are for everybody: pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, transit riders of all ages and abilities. And by getting more people out of cars and onto bikes and buses, we can also protect and improve the environment. We want to, as we said, improve the comfort for transit riders and pedestrians and safety, and support vibrant communities. And speed is one of the things that I think most deters pedestrians from using streets like 119. But when you're going slowly at 15 miles per hour, or even 20 miles per hour, you have a much wider field of vision, and you can see people on the sidewalks off to the side. You can see people in the crosswalks. You can see the cyclists to the side of you. But as you speed up and you go to 40 miles an hour, your field of vision really shrinks.
Well, aside from the field of vision, the fact of the matter is that sometimes on Route 119, it's very difficult to get into White Plains efficiently because the traffic is slow. Traffic sometimes goes 20 miles an hour on its own. Sometimes it doesn't even reach 20 miles an hour. I know during this past Christmas holiday shopping season, there was one evening where it took 20 minutes just to go from the area of city limits to the area of the Metro North train station on Route 119. So Route 119 in the complete streets concept is really the antithesis of what they're proposing here. Route 119 is used by most people as an efficient way,
And a
supposedly,
route.
of
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
into White Plains, a connector from point A to point B. They do acknowledge that it's an arterial, but I found it really interesting that in one of the graphics that was shown by Midge Walker, if you look carefully, you'll notice that they had a center mall down the street
Yeah, these
with,
are some of the
with
street
trees.
plans, yeah.
You'll note that they had very, very wide bike lanes on the street, and you'll notice that the vehicular traffic was down to one lane.
Yes,
So
that's a typical plan right there.
if that illustration is meant to be Route 119, I think we all have a rude awakening here as to just how practical this complete streets idea
One lane of
is.
traffic in one direction, and one lane of traffic in the other direction, bicycle lanes, parking. How are the bicyclists going to get around the cars attempting to park? I mean, it's really
Also keep in mind that something that was promised in conjunction with the new Tappan Zee Bridge is something called bus rapid transit. And
where is that?
Their
Are they
idea-
running yet?
Well,
No.
their idea was to dedicate lanes to
Yes.
this bus rapid transit,
Yeah.
to make it desirable for people to get on a bus on the other side of the Tappan Zee and zoom right into downtown White Plains in record time, right?
Yes, well, we await those buses.
Complete streets is not something that adds to the efficiency of your ride from the Tappan Zee Bridge or Rockland County into downtown White Plains if you're on a bus, unless you have a dedicated bus lane.
And they want bicyclists to go from the Tappan Zee Bridge over 119 into White Plains and across the county. Perhaps they should charge tolls for
How many
bicyclists
would you
crossing
see
that bridge.
making that commute in the 8-degree weather we have had?
I have not seen too many.
Anyway.
Meanwhile, Governor Cuomo presented his budget, and the effect on White Plains is this. We have $2 million more in White Plains school aid, approximately. Highest ever it's been now, if this goes through and is passed. A 2% tax cap, which is up from last year. And that means we can raise our tax levy, $3.5 million, and $225 million as a school budget is not inconceivable.
Now, part of Cuomo's pitch in delivering his budget message was efforts to continue tax credits for property owners, efforts to hold down the increases in state spending, efforts to further reduce the tax levies on your income taxes here in New York State. However, he did point out that there is a looming budget deficit here, so they have to come up with money somewhere. Where do you come up with money in a budget of this size?
Search me, I'll look, let's see.
The operating budget alone is $100 billion. The total budget is over $160 billion. How do you do this?
Yes.
How do you keep doing what you're doing here?
Well, President Trump kept doing what he has been doing for the last 12 months.
Indeed. Trump takes another trip to Mar-a-Lago this afternoon for another weekend at our expense, and part of that trip is to celebrate his 1 year in office. First year. Amazing.
Throwing himself a party.
He is throwing a party tomorrow at Mar-a-Lago, and if you would like to go to the party, you can do that. He'll be happy to sell you a ticket for the party. The price is $100,000 per couple. Will there be a government shutdown at midnight? We don't know as of right now when we're recording this program Friday morning, but keep in mind that one of the main objectives of Trump and his former chief advisor Steve Bannon has been to destroy government as we've known it for 2.5 centuries. Donald Trump is trying to convince the gullible that it's the Democrats who are to blame if there is a shutdown, but the reality is it's the Republicans who are in control of government. They control the House, the Senate, and the White House, and they control whether it keeps operating or whether it shuts down. Former White House advisor and campaign chairman Steve Bannon has been subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury by special counsel Robert Mueller. Bannon says he'll cooperate with Mueller's investigators looking into the Trump-Russia connection if that'll keep him from having to appear before the grand jury. When Bannon was called to testify before the House Intelligence Committee this week, he refused to answer questions when told by the White House to keep quiet. Didn't Trump and Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders say all questions would be answered? You don't suppose that they were lying.
No.
In case you have any doubts that President Trump is a racist and has based his immigration policies on white supremacist beliefs, his administration's Department of Homeland Security announced Wednesday that Haitians will be no longer allowed to apply for seasonal work visas and come to the U.S. Remember how Trump called Haiti and El Salvador and all of Africa S-hole countries, and how he said he'd welcome immigrants from countries like predominantly white Norway, and how Republicans like Senators Tom Cotton and David Perdue conspired with Trump to lie about him openly expressing his racist beliefs during a meeting at the White House. The new policy shift should dispel any doubts about where Trump stands and who he is, and how many other racists are now busily at work in Washington. The FBI collected evidence of the discrimination against blacks, which was a way of life for Donald Trump and his father Fred in the operation of their apartment buildings in the 1970s here in New York. White Plains Week has seen many of the original FBI agents' reports. Names are redacted, but what the Trumps did is well documented in the reports we have seen. The White House has blocked longtime Trump and advisor and aide Hope Hicks from testifying before the House Intelligence Committee. Reports say the Mueller investigation is following the money, the Russian mob money, and other international mob money, and stolen money from the treasuries of various countries, and money from the Russian banks controlled by Vladimir Putin, and it's leading right to Trump and son-in-law Jared Kushner's real estate projects, such as the Trump Soho project in Manhattan. President Trump had an official presidential physical exam by the White House doctor, who happens to be a Navy Rear Admiral. Dr. Ronnie Jackson at first said he's in excellent health. However, when pressed at a news conference on Tuesday, admitted that Trump is overweight, just 1 pound less than the threshold for being declared obese. Jackson said his diet, which is heavy with fast food like McDonald's burgers and fries, isn't very good, and Trump needed to exercise regularly. We all do, actually. Trump takes cholesterol-lowering medication, aspirin, and Propecia for hair loss. Although Jackson sought to downplay it, Trump has heart disease. His coronary calcium score now stands at 133, which is up about 400% from the 34 it was in 2009. When CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta reported this fact, the White House jumped all over him as being a fake doctor reporting on a fake news service. But even the White House's real doctor had to admit that Trump does have arteriosclerosis, coronary artery disease in plain language. Attorney General Jeff Sessions says he will fight the use of medical marijuana. 29 states have legalized the use of marijuana for medical purposes, such as easing the pain of cancer patients. Sessions says he'll try to shut down the whole thing. The Trump administration has reversed guidelines put into effect under President Obama, allowing stiff fines and penalties against nursing homes which abuse senior citizens. Since 2013, 4 out of every 10 nursing homes have been cited for abusing elderly residents or another violation. The Trump administration has been campaigning to reverse at least 60 environmental regulations. It's not just health care and nursing care regulations. Governor Cuomo of New York and Attorney General Eric Schneiderman on Wednesday filed a complaint with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, alleging it has failed to enforce the Federal Clean Air Act. The Trump administration announced Thursday a new division within the Department of Health and Human Services, which will try to appease right-wingers, fundamentalist Christians, and other religious groups. It will focus on finding ways to legalize the ability of individuals and organizations to refuse to provide specific health care services, such as birth control and abortion, by claiming conscious and religious freedom, and also to refuse to provide health care to lesbians, gays, and transgenders.
Refuse?
Refuse. Is President Trump lining his pockets with taxpayer and political contributor money? ABC News looked at money flowing into Trump businesses since he took office. He spent 109 days at Trump resorts in his first year in office, almost 1/3 of the year. We taxpayers get billed for everything. For example, $39,000 for golf cart rentals for the Secret Service on one weekend alone. His golf club at Bedminster, New Jersey, tried to turn Trump's presidency into an ad campaign by promoting that if you hold a wedding at the golf resort, Trump might drop in to say hello to the bride and groom and pose for pictures with them and their guests.
For a fee, right?
Yeah, if they rent the place to hold their wedding.
yes.
The Republican National Committee paid the Trump Hotel in Washington, on a site owned by the federal government and leased to Trump, $122,000 for a fundraiser in June. Stormy Daniels doesn't do the weather on TV. She's a pornographic movie actress who had an affair with Donald Trump while he was married to Melania and was paid $130,000 to keep quiet about it.
Well, that takes your breath away. That's one week. That's 1 week.
I've got two more things to take your breath away. Ready?
I know that was difficult for you, that last
Glenn
story.
Simpson of the Fusion GPS Group, that's a firm that had the former British spy Christopher Steele put together the Trump dossier, told the House Intelligence Committee there's information showing that Trump took Russian mob money. According to NBC News, the FBI has reason to investigate leads that Russian mob money went to the National Rifle Association, which then donated it to the Trump campaign. That makes your jaw drop, makes mine drop.
The National Rifle Association, those staunch red-blooded Americans.
Apparently, what the FBI has found is the possibility that the Russians infiltrated not only the NRA, but other groups, such as right-wing groups, such as fundamentalist Christian groups,
That would explain a lot.
got money to these groups, which in turn donated it to the Trump campaign.
You know, that is amazing. Peter, thank you for rounding this up every week, because it's something in its entirety that is just stunning.
The picture is just
Bleak.
too much to believe, almost, not only because of all the books that have been written about it, but because of the investigations which are going on. It's not just Mueller, but it's FBI. It's criminal. Money laundering is a criminal enterprise. If this goes anywhere, just mind-boggling.
Well, we wonder why they haven't observed this before it even started, right? Or at the beginning of it. Okay.
What are we going to mention here about the show
Chorus
that we
Line,
saw last
open
night?
up.
A Chorus Line.
Chorus Line.
Just
terrific.
a great, spectacular
insight
show. I mean, it's as good, if not better, than what they did on Broadway. That's how good it is over at the Westchester Broadway Theater in Elmsford.
Right. John Bailey, Peter Katz. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week. News and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.